On the day I got married to Asher, his first love jumped off a building and killed herself. On our wedding night, my husband hugged that woman's body and cried hoarsely. He said, "Arya, if you hadn't been so pushy, how could she have died?" After that, on every anniversary of our marriage, he would wear a black suit and go to visit the grave. He killed my cat and forced me to have an abortion. He said, "Serafina is dead. How can you smile so happily? For the rest of your life, you must live in repentance." When I opened my eyes again, I went back to college. Serafina was still alive. And I hadn't married him yet. Everything was still in time. This time, I will fulfill him and Serafina. The two are locked together and will never be separated. In May, the sky has lost the mildness of spring and has a touch of heat. The sun is shining brightly. I watched Asher running on the basketball court, sweating profusely. It was only when the game ended that I came to my senses. I was reborn in college. Next, it should be the classic scene, Serafina bringing water to Asher. And I smashed her water bottle. Thoughts slowly echoed in my mind. In my previous life, when Asher's game was about to end, I excitedly went to the supermarket and bought his favorite drink. In addition, I also bought water for his teammates. After paying, I found that good best friend Serafina, who had originally agreed to come to the supermarket to buy water with me, was gone. I didn't care and thought she probably had something to do. After sending her a message, I carried the heavy mineral water and walked towards the basketball court. When I got there, I heard the cheers over there. So, I quickened my pace. But on the basketball court, I saw everyone surrounding Asher. And Asher was holding a water cup with Peppa Pig on it. That water cup was clearly Serafina's. And he, without any hesitation, directly unscrewed the lid of the water cup and drank from it. Asher and I grew up together. When we were little, the elders in the family joked about arranging a baby marriage. Since I was 7 or 8 years old, he has liked to call me little wife, making me blush. So, I know that Asher has obsessive-compulsive disorder. In high school, we often did exercises together. Once, I mistakenly took his water cup and drank from it. Although he didn't say anything, his beautiful eyebrows were deeply wrinkled. Afterwards, I saw the water cup I had drunk from in the trash can. From that time on, I knew that he had a deep obsessive-compulsive disorder, just like his mother. When I saw Asher drinking from Serafina's water cup, I immediately realized that the two of them had had a deeper communication without telling me. Exchanged body fluids? So, he has no physiological rejection of her? In an instant, I felt so sick that I wanted to vomit. At the same time, I also remembered that I don't know since when Asher buys me milk tea, there must be a mango-flavored one. I am allergic to mangoes. And Serafina likes mango-flavored ones. When giving me a gift, Serafina must also have an identical one. In my previous life, I also raised objections to this. But he said with a smile, "Arya, she is your good best friend and is not treated well at home. If we don't treat her better, who else will treat her well? It seems reasonable." In my previous life, I was very simple-minded and never thought about deeper issues. Even before this basketball game, I never thought that Asher would like Serafina. After all, he had promised me early on that he would marry no one but me in this life. When we were in kindergarten, he always saved the candies distributed by the teacher for me. In elementary school, when other children pulled my braid, he would pull me behind him and fight with them. 1 against 5. He was beaten and covered in bruises. He said that he is a man and should naturally protect me well. In junior high school, in the blooming years, with tender feelings. Other classmates avoided each other for fear of getting a bad reputation for puppy love. He bought me soda, caught cicadas for me, and picked flowers for me. He once said to me privately, "Arya, we are destined to be together." So, even if we are a little closer than others at this time, it doesn't matter. I smiled, feeling a little shy in my heart. My heart was pounding like a little deer, and my smile was sweet and gentle. In high school, with the heavy schoolwork, we became the most beautiful colors in each other's lives. In order to be with him, I gave up my strengths and chose science. I did exercises tirelessly, over and over again. Hard work pays off. I finally got into the same university as him. From then on, we were always together, envied by others. So, in my previous life, when I found out that he and Serafina were having an affair secretly, I couldn't hold back and rushed up and smashed Serafina's water bottle hard on the ground. He was stunned for a moment. Probably thinking that I had embarrassed him in front of everyone, he pushed me hard. Coincidentally, as I took a step back, I stepped on a broken stone. My foot slipped and I immediately fell on the ground in an extremely ungraceful manner. The surrounding classmates let out loud mocking laughs. He seemed not to see that I had fallen. He bent down and picked up that pink water cup. My bottom fell on the hard cement ground, and the pain made my eyes fill with tears. When I struggled to get up from the ground, I found that there were blood stains on my palm, probably from scraping on the ground. Beside me, when Serafina saw me get up from the ground, she hurriedly said in a wrong tone, "Arya, don't be angry. I just saw that big brother Asher is so hot and sweating a lot. And he's in the sun. If he gets dehydrated." At this point, she lowered her head and twisted her fingers. There were tears on her fair face. She was truly pitiful. As she spoke, she also reached out to pull me. I shook off her hand, and she hurriedly hid beside Asher. "Big brother Asher, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have given you my water cup to drink. I saw that you were sweating a lot. I'm sorry." She apologized continuously. "Don't be angry with Sister Arya. It's all my fault. I didn't think it through well." Asher had a cold face and insisted that I apologize to Serafina. He said that I was being unreasonable. He also asked me, what's wrong with drinking from someone else's water cup? Did I want to watch him die of thirst? "Arya, I really didn't know that you are such a narrow-minded person. Serafina is your friend, your best friend. Can't you even tolerate her? In future when we get married, won't you be able to tolerate even a female mosquito around me?" His several good buddies laughed exaggeratedly. Someone else teased and said that I was jealous because I cared about Asher. "Brother Asher, you are so lucky." Everyone made a commotion. That day, I turned around and left and cried all afternoon. Afterwards, he came to coax me again. Looking at the injury on my hand, his eyes turned red. "Arya, I'm sorry. I was just so thirsty after coming down from the basketball court. When I saw her holding a water cup for me, I couldn't resist. I didn't know that you cared so much. It's all my fault. But Serafina is your best friend. You are in the same dormitory. I just regard her as a younger sister. I really have no other thoughts. I was afraid that you might accidentally trigger her illness. I was a little anxious and pushed you. Don't be angry." In the evening, he took me to eat and bought me gifts. He looked at me with eyes that were even more affectionate than when looking at a dog. "Right, Serafina has depression. She said that at home, she was too depressed. Everything she did was wrong. She comes from an extremely patriarchal family. Her younger brother is like a king at home. Even her grandma doesn't allow her to eat at the table. She can only eat the leftovers of her younger brother. Serafina told us, I really can't stand my younger brother. While eating, he spits into the food. And I can only eat what he leaves behind. If I don't eat, I will go hungry. I feel sick while eating." At that time, all of us in the dormitory sympathized with her and comforted her. Given that she had depression, we all let her have her way in case of anything. "Hey, aren't you going to buy water?" Serafina's voice came from beside my ear, pulling my thoughts back. In my previous life, she sent me away to buy water. Then, she hurriedly gave water to Asher and blatantly declared war on me. I looked at the Peppa Pig water cup in her arms and said with a smile, "Why buy water? Didn't you bring water?" Probably because of my meaningful smile, for a moment, she was a little flustered. I stood up and ran towards the school's small supermarket. Well, Serafina probably thought I was going to buy water. Yes, I went to buy water, but I only bought one bottle. I unscrewed the cap and took several big gulps. Under the hot sun, I was about to be dried into salted fish. I don't like basketball either. Well, except for the earth, I don't like any other ball games very much. I took out my phone and called my mom. After chatting about some family matters for a while, I began to get to the point. Mom, I'll secretly tell you that Asher is in a relationship. Ha ha ha. On the phone, my tone was light and cheerful. On the other end of the phone, my mom was obviously stunned. After a while, she asked me, Arya, what's going on? Weren't you in a relationship with Asher? Mom, why do you have such a misunderstanding? I hurriedly said, Asher and I grew up together. Speaking of this, it's all your fault. You've been teasing us since we were little. But between me and him, we just grew up together and seem a little closer than others. Mom, don't you think about it? We peed and played with mud together when we were little. How can we fall in love like this? I deliberately laughed cheerfully and added, I'll tell you. The aloof school hunk in our school is so good looking. I'll try hard and strive to win him over. Don't talk about me. Let's talk about Asher. On the other end of the phone, my mom was obviously confused. After a long time, she said, Okay, let's talk about Asher. What's wrong with him? Did he really get a girlfriend? Yes. He even shared a water cup with a girl. This is not the point. The point is that he got a girlfriend but didn't invite us to eat. Don't you think it's too much? My mom said earnestly, too much. Then, she asked me about the aloof school hunk. I told her that I was working on it. So, after chatting for more than 10 minutes, when I was about to hang up, my mom suddenly asked me, Arya, give me a definite answer. Are you and Asher really not in a relationship? Mom, it's possible with anyone except him. I said this resolutely. On the other end of the phone, my mom seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. When I hung up the phone, I also breathed a sigh of relief. In my previous life, I was simple and kind and didn't understand the family business. But in this life, I know that this is a key point. There is a huge problem with the capital chain in Asher's family and they are in the process of financing. If the financing fails, Asher's family will face the risk of bankruptcy. In my previous life, my family invested in it because Asher's dad said to my mom, Arya from your family has her heart on my kid. Sooner or later, we will be a family. In this life, I clearly told my mom that I don't love Asher. We won't participate in Asher's family business. Letting go of Asher is really great. When a person no longer loves, that feeling of relaxation and joy is truly good for physical and mental health. In my previous life, under Asher's cold violence, I became depressed and died of breast cancer. In this life, for the sake of my breasts, I should love myself a little more. I walked to the basketball court while drinking the beverage. Sure enough, Asher was raising his neck and drinking from that Peppa Pig water cup with big gulps. In the sun, his Adam's apple was rolling. Probably seeing me, he hurriedly stopped drinking and walked towards me. Arya, where have you been? He smiled and asked me. By the way, did you buy water for our teammates? I shrugged and said with a smile, not yet. The supermarket is over there. It's just a few steps away. As I spoke, my gaze fell on the water cup in his hand. He seemed to notice something and hurriedly handed the water cup to Serafina. Serafina took the water cup. In her eyes, there was a trace of imperceptible disappointment. Then, she spoke softly and said, Arya, I think Asher was just too thirsty. So, I let him drink a few sips from my water cup first. Don't misunderstand. I pretended to be confused and asked, what am I misunderstanding? Oh? At this point, I asked with a smile, Serafina, don't you like Asher? Are you? Serafina's face turned a little pale. She helplessly twisted the hem of her clothes. There was also a flash of panic in Asher's eyes. I covered my mouth and laughed. What's wrong? University is a paradise for falling in love. Serafina, if you like Asher, just like him. Is it that you don't want to officially announce it and treat everyone to a meal? Asher suddenly shouted, Enough, Arya. There should be a limit to your jokes. I sneered. You immoral couple. You've even rolled in the sheets. What are you pretending for? Asher and his team won the game. In the evening, they had a gathering and ate barbecue. They invited me, but I didn't go. Serafina went. When she came back, it was very late. She seemed to have drunk a lot. Her face was flushed, and she kept talking about Asher. I pretended not to hear. In the blink of an eye, it was the beginning of the month. On this day, only Serafina and I were in the dormitory. She suddenly asked me, "Arya, hasn't your mom given you your living expenses this month?" I nodded and made a sound of agreement, preparing to continue memorizing words. Serafina said, "Then, can you give me my living expenses?" I almost burst out laughing. I deliberately asked, "Serafina, if you want living expenses, you should ask your mom for them." "Why are you asking me?" In my previous life, Serafina always cried bitterly in our dormitory, saying that her mom was patriarchal and didn't give her living expenses. She also said that since she was in college and an adult, she should be self-reliant. She was asked to find a part-time job while attending college. I was a child who had been soaked in a honeypot since childhood. How could I understand these things? Therefore, filled with righteous indignation, I had more than 10,000 yuan in living expenses per month. So, I took out 3,000 yuan to support her. Unexpectedly, as I supported her, she actually took it for granted and asked me for it. I had thought of a countermeasure early on. I said with a smile, "Classmate Serafina, what you said is wrong. In the past, when I saw that you were short of money, if I had the ability, I would help you a bit. Supporting you is out of the friendship in our dormitory. Not supporting you is my duty. After all, my family is not a charity company. Now I like a boy." At this point, I pretended to be intoxicated. I put my hands on my cheeks and looked up at a 45-degree angle with a bright and sad expression. "I want to save some money to buy him a gift and then confess," I said. Serafina had originally wanted to act pitiful and ask me for financial support. After hearing this sentence, she was immediately shocked. Her mouth was wide open and could fit an ostrich egg. After a long time, she stammered and said, "Arya, aren't you and Asher a couple? How can you confess to someone else?" I laughed. So, she knew. Originally, Asher and I were in a relationship. I deliberately said, "Classmate Serafina, you must have misunderstood. Asher and I grew up together since childhood. The elders in our families were just joking. How could we be a couple? When it comes to this matter, it really should be blamed on Asher. He has no sense of boundaries at all, which makes it so that no boys chase me in college. In the future, I should keep a little distance from him. You see, last time he won the game, I didn't go to eat either." At this point, I spread my hands and exclaimed exaggeratedly, "Sweet love, here I come." At first, Serafina's face was very ugly, but then she immediately laughed out loud, very happily. Hee, she probably thought that without me, Asher would be hers for sure. She could achieve a class leap and marry into a wealthy family in one fell swoop. In the afternoon, Asher called me and asked me to meet at the school cafe. I went there, preparing to make things clear with him. After sitting down in the cafe, he got straight to the point and asked me, "Arya, what do you mean?" "What?" I pretended not to understand and asked, "Asher, just say it if you have something to say. We have been in love for so long. Now, without a word from you, you say that you want to find a boy to fall in love with and you like someone else?" His voice suddenly rose a lot. As a result, many people in the cafe couldn't help looking over at us, ready to eat the first-hand gossip. I calmly smiled and said, "Asher, when were we ever in love? Just because the elders in our families joked a few times, or because we have known each other since childhood, do you think this is love?" He suddenly stood up and pointed at me, saying, "Arya, you are a fickle woman. I love you wholeheartedly and spoil you. From childhood to adulthood, I picked flowers and caught cicadas for you, fought for you, and tutored you. Unexpectedly, after entering college, you are going to completely deny it?" He was extremely excited and even shouted loudly, "Classmates, you judge this?" There are still quite a few people in the school cafe. I stood up and took out a few things from the bag I was carrying and threw them on the table. "Asher, Don't make it seem like you are so deeply in love with me. Why don't you talk about your affair with Serafina and exchanging body fluids in a hotel room? If we were really in a relationship, wouldn't your behavior count as cheating? I think we grew up together. If you don't like me and you like another girl, I understand you. Why am I the fickle one? You can't control your lower body and sleep with another woman. How dare you come and call me fickle? As I spoke, I threw that stack of indecent photos on the table and on the ground. Then I picked up my bag and turned around to leave. After I was reborn, I immediately found a paparazzi and asked him to keep an eye on Asher and Serafina and get intimate photos of the two of them. In fact, this stuff is not prepared for Asher. After all, if a man is unmarried and a woman is unmarried, it's his business if he wants to cheat, as long as I am clear-headed. Unlike in my previous life when I only had a love-struck mind and nothing else. I want to get conclusive evidence and quietly give it to my parents so that they know that it is impossible between me and Asher. No matter what Asher's family says, don't invest in Asher's family. This time, I will definitely not give Asher the capital to tie me down for a lifetime with the family company, nor will I give him the qualification to become the group CEO. Before evening, the gossip that Asher from the finance department was two-timing spread throughout the school. Hey, do you know? Yes, it's from your finance department. How calculating. While having an affair with another girl in a hotel room, he still accuses his childhood sweetheart girlfriend of loving someone else? Oh my, it's so exciting? I found out. The object of the affair is called Serafina and she is also in the same dormitory as the childhood sweetheart. Well, what do you know? Serafina also received sponsorship from the childhood sweetheart. Poor little childhood sweetheart. I don't know if she really loves someone else or just found an excuse. I guess it's just finding an excuse. Otherwise, what else can she do? This man is so shameless. After doing such a shameless and ugly thing, he still dares to accuse his girlfriend of being fickle? At that time, when I threw the photos to Asher, a few fell on the ground and were picked up by curious people and posted on the school bulletin board. Because the scale was relatively large, it instantly exploded. Everyone was eating melons, laughing, and scolding with contempt. As for our dormitory, since everyone knew from the beginning that Asher and I were childhood sweethearts, the family had been talking about arranging a baby marriage since childhood. That was made clear. Everyone in our dormitory knew about my sponsoring Serafina, and so did our neighbors. Now, after the photos were exposed, everyone pointed and criticized Serafina with much contempt. Isabella, who sleeps on the bunk below me, was the first to scold. Aria, it's a pity that you are so good to Serafina. How could she have the nerve to do such a shameless thing? Don't mention it. I'm so ashamed. I actually live in the same dormitory with such a woman who has no sense of shame and no bottom line. Beside her, Chloe also comforted me. I waved my hand magnanimously and said, what makes me most angry about this matter is Asher. You say, if he likes someone else, just tell me clearly, right? He hooked up with Serafina while still pretending to be deeply in love and flirting with me. He also asked me to meet and accused me. How shameless. My two roommates cursed one after another, big jerk, scumbag. Serafina, who was eavesdropping at the door, had an uncertain expression on her face. From that day on, Serafina was isolated by everyone. After all, everyone has a scale in their hearts. Or rather, everyone has a certain moral bottom line. Everyone despises the act of stealing someone else's boyfriend. In our dormitory, Isabella is the most just and often can't help but taunt her a few times. What surprised me the most was that even in this situation, Serafina actually went to the counselor to complain, saying that the people in our dormitory were snobbish, bullying her and isolating her. The counselor talked to us. Before I could speak, Chloe had vividly and clearly told the whole story in an organized way. Counselor, we are not bullying her. We just don't want to play with her. You know, Aria gave money and clothes. In the end, her boyfriend was stolen by her. We who haven't done anything. Who knows how we will be backstabbed by her in the future. If we can't afford to provoke her, we can only avoid her. Regarding this, the counselor is also a person who can distinguish right from wrong and naturally won't say much. What I didn't expect was that when school was over this day, Serafina stopped me. "Arya, what exactly do you mean?" she asked me. I was curious. What did I mean? I smiled indifferently and said, "Serafina, if you like Asher and you two are together, I have no opinion. But this doesn't stop me from looking down on you from the bottom of my heart. I don't want to see you." Isabella pulled me over and said, "Arya, let's go. Don't pay attention to her." Serafina had red eyes and was on the verge of tears. She deliberately said loudly, "You are all snobbish. Seeing that I have no money, you flatter Arya." Chloe gave her a hard look and said loudly, "If you have no money, you still have the ability to steal someone else's boyfriend?" Saying that, she turned around and left. In fact, after Serafina and Asher's affair was exposed, the two of them openly started going out together. I don't know what kind of stimulation Serafina received. She started making trouble with Asher, asking for this and that, and comparing everything with me. She disliked clothes that cost 100 or 200 yuan as being too low class to wear. She disliked bags without a brand as being unable to be carried out. She disliked jewelry bought on Taobao as being junk. She wanted to buy clothes that cost thousands, bags that cost tens of thousands, and gold, jade, pearl, and jewelry. Asher has a lot of pocket money. But he often needs to eat, drink and have fun with a bunch of friends. When he acts like a big spender and pays the bill, he is extremely generous. When getting along with Serafina, it is naturally okay to buy some small things usually. For a few hundred yuan or occasionally for 1,000 yuan once in a while, he can afford it. However, when it comes to buying things like a bag that costs tens of thousands of yuan or a gold bracelet, he can't do it. He started to borrow from his friends and find excuses to ask his family for money. At first, Asher's family didn't know about Asher and Serafina's affair. Asher's family had a major problem with the capital chain and was facing the risk of bankruptcy. Asher's father was raising money everywhere. Of course, in this situation, relatives and friends around are the best people to consider. Asher's family had come to my family early on. But my parents are more cautious about business matters and said they would take a look again. Later, after my mom told my dad about Asher and Serafina's affair, my dad was also very angry and directly invested in another project. I know that project. According to my experience in my previous life, it is a hen that lays golden eggs. So, I deliberately reminded my mom implicitly. My parents are both smart people. After an assessment, they invested in this project. When Asher's father found out, he came to my house and inevitably criticized my parents, saying that they ignored the past friendship and refused to help him. My dad just smiled vaguely. Then, Asher's father couldn't help but mention me. "Arya, I know that there is a problem with my family's capital chain and we are facing the risk of bankruptcy. So you are unwilling to invest. But, don't you think about it? Arya from your family has her heart on my kid. Your family and my family will be a family sooner or later. What are you keeping this money for? Listen, is this human language? Put it another way, isn't it? Your daughter loves my son. Your family only has one daughter. This asset will be my son's sooner or later. It will be given sooner or later. What are you covering up for? To put it bluntly, it is blatantly eating up a family without a male heir." When my mom heard this, she couldn't help but sneer and said, "Charles, when did my Arya like your kid? It's just that the two children grew up together and studied together. You mustn't ruin my Arya's reputation." That's all right. Your kid has had a girlfriend at school for a long time. Oh, I heard it's still a mental patient. Asher's taste is really picky. Saying that, my mom directly threw a stack of photos I gave her to Asher's parents. Instantly, the old couple and Asher's family changed their expressions. Asher's family's financing failed. The bank loan expired and the bank sued. Not only were all of Asher's family's assets frozen, but even the real estate of Asher's family was about to be auctioned by the court. Asher didn't know any of these things. In order to marry Asher, Serafina now has no obstacle like me. Therefore, she is full of energy and gently coaxes him. This greatly satisfies Asher's self-esteem and male chauvinism to some extent. However, the good times didn't last long. Just when Serafina thought that her and Asher's matter was a sure thing, Asher's mother found the school and directly came to our dormitory. She slapped Serafina in the face. Then, Asher's mother grabbed Serafina's hair and started beating her. "I'll beat you to death, you shameless bitch, crazy woman, little slut." Asher's mother cursed and shouted loudly. Serafina was beaten and cried. At first, she didn't know that the fierce old woman opposite was Asher's own mother. This incident continued until the director of the teaching affairs office came. It continued until we called the police. Of course, I also called Asher and asked him to come over. Only then did Asher's mother stop. The two sides began mediation. Since we are in the same dormitory, we also followed. Asher's mother kept saying that Asher and I were a couple. It was all Serafina's fault. She was like a seductive demon who seduced her precious son. I couldn't help sneering in my heart. Blaming Serafina? Why didn't she blame her son for not being able to control his belt? In my previous life, she also PUA'd me like this. She said that Serafina was the one who loved her son the most and could die for her son. And I already had his son. Why didn't I cherish him well? Hee hee. In my previous life, I was just blindly in love and thought that Asher was perfect in everything. It was my fault and Serafina's fault. It had nothing to do with him. A brain is a good thing. But if you are in love and have a love-struck mind, it's better not to have it. The police asked me what was going on? How would I know what was going on? So, I said that Asher and I grew up together. When we were little, the parents of both families also joked about us. But now that we are all grown up, he likes Serafina and I like someone else. The two of us have nothing to do with each other. Many people in our school know that Asher and Serafina are in a relationship and have developed to physical contact and intimacy. After hearing my words, the police could only persuade Asher's mother. Asher's mother made a big fuss and insisted that Asher break up with Serafina and forced him to apologize to me. She also said to me, "Arya, Asher was just temporarily confused by that little slut. Don't be angry." I told her with a smile that I was not angry at all. "Auntie, Asher has a girlfriend." "I'm too happy. How could I be angry?" After being made a scene by Asher's mother, Asher only then found out that his family had already gone bankrupt. He was no longer the young master of the Asher family. This was not all. In addition to bank loans, there were also some private loans that needed to be repaid. Asher's family still owed employee salaries. He was in a relationship with Serafina. Because Serafina insisted on comparing with me, he even borrowed some online loans. Originally, he thought that just over 100,000 yuan. If he went home and found a reason to make a fuss, his doting old mother would immediately give it to him. But now he was dumbfounded. Like Asher's father, he also set his mind on my family. He started chasing me with all his might. Things like lighting candles at the dormitory entrance, bringing me breakfast every day, giving me flowers. If it were someone else, there would naturally be some pure love warriors cheering for him and shouting, "Be together." However, as soon as people heard the word Asher at the entrance of the girls' dormitory, they immediately took a detour. There was no other reason. The indecent photos of him and Serafina had been hanging on the school bulletin board for a long time. Just as the limelight had just died down, his mother rushed to the school in a flurry and made a big scene in the girls' dormitory, and the police were called, letting the gossipmongers in the school have a good feast of gossip. I, the person involved, don't even know to what extent this melon has developed. Anyway, I am the poor person who was cheated on in everyone's mouth. This morning, Asher came again. I couldn't bear it anymore. I directly threw the roses he gave me on the ground and scolded, "Asher, can you have some shame? You like Serafina. Can't you two get along well? Serafina is making a fuss every day, saying that we are bullying her and insulting her. She threatened to commit suicide by wearing a red dress and turn into a fierce ghost to take revenge on us. We are almost driven crazy by her. And you are shameless. You don't care about face, but I do. I still want to chase after other boys. What you are doing is sexual harassment, okay? If you keep making a fuss, I will call the police. Asher looked at me blankly, his eyes complicated. I was too lazy to pay attention to him. I hurriedly ran towards the classroom with my 2 roommates. These 2 days, not only Asher is making a fuss about me, but Serafina is also making a fuss about me. She said to me, "Arya, since you don't like Asher, why can't you fulfill us? We are true love. Please, don't compete with me for Asher. I really like him very much. I love him very much. I can't live without him." She knelt at the dormitory entrance, holding a sign, asking me to forgive her. I explained to her several times that I really didn't like Asher and had broken up with him. Later, she made a fuss with Asher several times. But after Asher knew his family situation, a chill immediately rose from his spine. For Asher, I was his only shortcut. So, he would desperately use his charm and everything to chase me. At this time, he hated Serafina to death in his heart. He thought that it was Serafina who ruined his good thing. If Serafina hadn't seduced him in person, how could he not be able to control himself and be with her? The above shameless words were spoken by Asher himself to me. Every time he explained Serafina's matter to me, he said that it was Serafina who seduced him. He also said that as a 20-year-old man, it was normal to have needs. He said to me that this was a sign of his good health. If I hadn't been reborn, I couldn't imagine how my former childhood playmate and once childhood sweetheart could be so shameless. As the final exams were approaching, we were all too busy to pay attention to other things and threw ourselves into our studies. Unexpectedly, just after the final exams ended, when Isabella, Chloe and I walked out of the examination room, we heard that someone was making a fuss about committing suicide on the top floor of the shopping mall opposite us. She was also wearing a red dress. It was said that she couldn't think straight after being broken up in a relationship. I felt something was wrong and pulled Isabella and Chloe to run towards the opposite shopping mall. Surely not, surely not. That stupid woman really committed suicide? Isabella was running out of breath and scolded, "Please don't. I don't want to encounter such an unlucky thing." However, we encountered such an unlucky thing. In this life and the previous life, Serafina couldn't escape the doom of suicide. She herself had mild depression. After being dumped by Asher and being despised by everyone, she couldn't think straight. Asher also stimulated and insulted her with various words from time to time. In the end, she resolutely jumped off the building and committed suicide just like in her previous life. But this time, the person who pushed her to the end step by step was precisely Asher, who loved her deeply in the previous life. When we arrived, her body had already been taken away. Asher, who was in a daze, was taken away by the police for questioning. Since Serafina committed suicide, Asher was quickly released. But after he was released, he fell seriously ill. It was said that he was frightened. After all, Serafina died in front of him wearing a big red wedding dress. It was normal to be frightened. But after Asher recovered from his illness, he started talking nonsense. He said that he was the executive CEO of Chingya Group. He had tens of billions of assets and many luxury houses. He wanted to marry me. He staggered and ran to my house. Coincidentally, my mom was afraid that Serafina's death would frighten me. After taking me on a trip, we just returned. Seeing his ragged and in a difficult situation appearance like a tramp, she frowned deeply. Arya, I found you. I found you. I tell you, I am just down on my luck temporarily. I will have money. Really. You have to believe me. No. At this point, he shook his head and said, "If you marry me, this time I will love you well and definitely won't let you down." I was really deceived by Serafina. I called the security guards and drove him away. Asher went crazy. Asher's parents worked everywhere and borrowed money to see a doctor for him. Their life was getting worse and more difficult. Of course, all these had nothing to do with me or my family anymore. A year later, at the business reception of Chinya Group, I ran into Ethan, the aloof school hunk from our school who I had always been talking about to deceive my mom. He held a glass of red wine and smiled gently and elegantly. "Miss Aria, I heard from Aria's mom that you have admired me for a long time?" As he spoke, he opened his phone and familiarly presented the QR code of his business card in front of me. I was so embarrassed that I could dig out a castle with my toes. The girls in the school who admired him could line up to the Atlantic Ocean. Can't I just talk casually? "Well, can I admire you? At a friend?" he said to me with a smile. This. Where is the so-called aloof flower? When the banquet ended and I walked to the door, Asher suddenly rushed out and shouted at me, "Arya, it's not like this. It's not like this. How can you like someone else? I know that you love me, love me." Saying that, with a stench all over him, he actually reached out to hug me. Because he looked like a tramp and was full of stench, the security guards dragged him away. I walked up to him and just looked at him. After a long time, I said, "Asher, this time, Arya, have nothing to do with you at all. Chinya Group also has nothing to do with you at all. Life without you is really so happy. I can live happily every day. And you, Serafina, died because of you. In this life and the previous life. You should repent for a lifetime in poverty." He opened his mouth wide and looked at me blankly. I ignored him, turned around, and walked towards my own bright future.